Reddit. In contrast to the hurtful comment thread, what's a genuinely kind comment somebody made to you that you can't forget? But I have friends like you, especially you. Context. I sent a few voice messages comforting my Turkish best friend after she had a breakup. That was her response. I never felt so loved by a friend before. My boss told me I look like little birds help me get dressed in the morning. I think I get dressed by a couple of moles and a platypus. Had a girl break up with me years ago and one of the last things I said to her was I hope you remember me well. Few years pass and I get an email from her. She's moved across the country and was thinking back on her life. Said that she does think of me from time to time and always does remember me well. She's on the other side of the country so it wasn't her trying to get back together. She just wanted to let me know. This is my personal favorite. So heartfelt. Too often people let the sad end to the relationship overshadow the good years. I was walking around the Smithsonian during a school field trip and this girl my age stopped me and said, "This is probably really creepy but you're just the prettiest girl I've ever seen. Just thought you should know," and walked away. My ex, actually right before we started dating, made an offhand comment that really stuck with me. We were just walking on campus from the library and were talking about homework and I casually mentioned that CS can be kinda isolating but I don't mind it too much. I don't get lonely easily. Campus is full of people etc and she quipped, "Yeah, I like doing things alone too, but I think I like doing stuff with you more." Made me feel great. I looked right at her as she said it and I guess she realized how it sounded cause she blushed and smiled. So I said, "I like doing stuff with you too," smiling back. Dang, that must have been the moment just before you started dating. You made this place feel like home. In high school I met a foreign exchange student from Italy about halfway through her stay in America. When we first met she told me about how alone she felt in America and how much she missed everyone back home. We had a thing for several months before she went home. A couple days before she left she told me that and it made me feel so good that I could bring her a little happiness and safety in a place so strange and far from home. I'm from California but living in Italy for 2 years, and it is so different here. So good job at making her feel less homesick. Now I need to find you here in Italy. You look just like a painting. It had been raining all day. I had just spent the last hour at the DMV, and at this point I was setting up for another hour at the Social Security office. The woman next to me was very put together, sitting up straight, really nice clothes. She was talking to a man who I assume was her husband. She kept turning and glancing at me and it was making me feel a little self-conscious. I was tired. My hair was in a side braid that was starting to get frizzy because I had been rained on. This lady was immaculate, and I am beside her looking like a wet dog. She suddenly reaches out, placing her hand on top of mine. "You look just like a painting." It could have been a backhanded compliment, but I choose to see it positively and it made me feel good. Leave me alone. I feel like that's actually the most intense compliment ever. When I think of paintings, I think of portraits, usually intense, soft focus, with a compelling look. I'd 100% take it as a compliment. I'd love to be compared to art. One time while talking and laughing with my mum, she suddenly stopped and told me that my laughing smile was the same as her sister's, my aunt. My aunt had died a year or so before that, and I always loved her smile. I went running for the first time in the hopes of trying to lose some weight. This lady walking her dog saw me nearly keeling over because I was so exhausted, and said to me, "You're doing an amazing job. Don't give up." I'll never forget it. It gave me a second wind and suddenly I could keep going. I tried something similar. A year ago, I had been running for a couple of weeks. While running, a random guy walking his dog made Finn Jurgens and said, "Looking good." I enthusiastically replied thanks and kept running. It was nothing amazing, but I won't forget it anytime soon either. You look good. I was on my way to catch the bus home from school. A random girl just stopped and said it to me. I am quite an awkward guy, so without stopping I shrugged, said thanks. Well, at least I think I said thanks. I might have just made a noise and started walking faster to catch the bus. It is one of those moments I look back at and cringe, but it also makes me feel good because it was the first time, and only time, I have got a compliment like that. I try to compliment dudes when I can get away with it without sounding like I'm hitting on them. They don't get complimented enough. I once had flowers delivered to my office and the card said, "I know I will never see you again, but I wanted to thank you for changing my life." I had no idea who sent them, but I'll never forget it. I was 17, traveling home on my own on the Greyhound. I had a long wait in a little mountain town, so I sat outside the station and played my guitar and sang. I was playing Heart's Love Alive and this older hippie couple stopped to listen. The woman slipped a silver bracelet off her wrist, and when I had finished playing, she put it on mine. She took her husband, arm in arm, and she complimented my old soul and told me that I had brightened their whole day. That was 9 years ago. I think about them often and I wear that bracelet quite frequently. It's one of my most favorite pieces of jewelry. You should wait till you hear a piece that touches you and pass the bracelet on. A friend asked me to hold his oversized drink while he was driving. Sure man, no prob. Man, you're like the nicest person. Thanks, I try to be. No, that's the thing. You don't try to be, you just are. I play on Xbox Live with a lot of people on Overwatch. A few days ago I was in a party with some friends and friends of them. I was talking about my son and one of the people in the game, a kid of about 14 or so, remarked that he always loves hearing me talk about my son and how the love radiates from my voice and that he can tell how much I care for my kid. It was such a genuine remark and I was really touched. I don't know. Compliment that 14-year-old kid on something next time you're playing. Maybe he comes from a home where nobody ever says anything nice, and he wishes you were his parents saying nice things about him. I was in a writing class in college. I tended to be outspoken and participated a lot in discussions. After class a girl approached me and said, "I just want you to know I think you're an interesting person." I had just started going out with someone, so I didn't really say anything aside from an awkward thanks though. My high school English teacher told me that he waits to read my essays until he has a coffee and time to relax. He also told me he will occasionally walk around to show other teachers the jokes in the essay. That made me want to be a writer. He's probably the greatest teacher I ever had, and one of very few people I want to make proud. That is the best compliment I've heard. I really do hope that you become a writer and be that person for somebody else. Waiting for my order to be taken at the drive-thru on Starbucks, I started singing along to the radio. When the song ended, the girl on the intercom said, "Whoa, I love your voice. I have no idea what you said." The song was in Spanish, but you sounded so sincere. To this day, it's my go-to memory when I'm feeling down for whatever reason. I'm usually pretty quiet around family or people I don't know. My wife's family is ruthless with the constant "does he not like us" crap. One time grandma said, "Why are you always so quiet?" and right as I'm ready to answer, my wife said, "He's just stoic." A save for me and a discreet dig on grandma. That's why I married her. I know you must have felt a little bit bad for the grandma, but you didn't have to marry her just to make her feel better. Being the only and youngest girl working at a cafe run only by Greek men in their late 20s 30s, I was definitely picked apart and made to feel pretty dumb with every little mistake. One day this lady pulled me aside to explain for a solid 5 minutes that everyone that works here is rude and selfish, only to explain that the only reason she still comes is because I have the most beautiful smile and my personality invites her in every time. She may have felt bad that I work with such sour men, but I'll never forget it. Your name really doesn't go with the story you just told. That's my brother, man. I went to a party with some friends. I knew a grand total of 3 people at that party. There were dozens of people in attendance. Anyways, I show up kind of late. My best friend has already been drinking. He sees me, gives me a hug, and when he's asked who I am, he responds with, "That's my brother, man." I can't express how much hearing that meant. I had a rough time with my peers growing up. I got bullied mercilessly. I was that chubby red-headed kid that everyone thought was weird. My hair was big and unruly. I was covered in freckles and I just couldn't figure out who I was or how to dress. I didn't fit in at all. I was at a funeral for the father of one of the kids I went to school with when I was home from university. A bunch of the kids I grew up with were there and one of them came up to me and said, "I just have to say that you are absolutely stunning. Everyone has been talking about how beautiful you've become." I almost started to cry. I moved 8 hours away from there because I hated them all so much for making my life heck because I was ugly. Still can't forgive them for everything they did, but to know that they regret it makes me feel so much better. I had a really good friend online who I met in a video game. We were like 15-16. We would play all day when we weren't at school and hang out on voice comms all day. That went on for a few years until we were like around 20. One day he just stopped coming online and no matter how I tried to reach out to him, he never showed up again. Another few years down the line, I think I was like 24 by then, I go to my PC to find a MSG on Skype at my birthday from said friend congratulating me for my birthday and apologizing for just vanishing, but he couldn't stay around me so he had to leave because he was interested in me but knew it would not work out. I had no idea about that, to be honest. In this really big wall of text he also went on how he will never forget me and how much talking to me and listening to my advices helped him out to get out of his crappy parents' home, find a job, going to university soon, and that even nowadays he still thinks about what I would tell him to do when he has to make an important decision, and that no person besides me had such a big part of the way he thinks and sees things now. After that MSG he just vanished again before I was even able to respond. He gave me so many compliments and how much of a positive impact I had on his life, etc. I will never forget that. If you read this city. This is so bittersweet, holy crap. I was told by a volunteer I worked with that I'm a good teacher, and I have a way with people. I never have been, nor do I aim to be, a teacher, but it's been a long-running joke within my family that I'm apparently awful with people. They don't mean it cruelly, but I very much internalized that sentiment. It was lovely to hear that my perception of myself isn't necessarily how others see me. People don't realize how hurtful jokes can sometimes be, completely unintentionally, too. Sure, it's funny to share a joke about someone, but making it a running gag cuts deeper. I'm pretty sure a heck of a lot of insecurities are born this way. The most memorable kind of comment came to me directly after a funeral from a widow who was moved by the music I had played for the service. She said, "I came into the church full of sorrow and left full of joy because your music was uplifting and inspirational, not the typical dirge-like music expected." Later that week, after the funeral, she mailed a thank you note which included a check for the music fund in the amount of $25,000. I posted this in a different thread. Cross-posting here. Guy I'd never met before approached me on the street. "Miss, do you have a second for me to tell you something? I've seen you around downtown for a while now, and you just always look so confident and sure of yourself, and I just want to say that I admire that and I hope you never lose it." Whoa, that's definitely not usually the follow-up compliments to that kind of open. As a teenager who has had friends over quite a bit for the last few years, I was once told by one of my close friends that everybody in our friend group has about 10 people, likes to come to my house and hang out because my house feels like home and it's very relaxing and fun. That made me pretty happy, knowing that I've a welcoming home environment when me and my family are just being ourselves. This thread's old and no one will read this, but you know what, frick it. I took a public management course as part of my public policy and administration major. I don't even remember the teacher's name, but he was awesome. He was a sweet old man who taught this one class and then was also the town manager of a town adjacent to the college town we were in. On the last day of class he was kind of leading this impromptu discussion about our opinions of the class, and then someone asked him about what he thought of teaching us. He then describes this guy who went to Walmart, bought a gun, went into his car and killed himself. He told us that that was his best friend and because of it he spiraled into a 4-year depression. He said he was barely hanging on and just decided to teach a class at my school after years of not doing any teaching. He said that the joking around, the thoughtful discussions, and personal conversations with all of us brought him out of a really dark place, and he thanked all of us for saving his life. Literally everyone was blown away and a few kids cried. It was totally out of left field and I never in a million years would have guessed that about him. It's stuck with me for years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.